As we're waiting and accepting new people into the session, I just want to direct your attention. If you scroll down underneath the presentation, you'll see the resources listed there. So most importantly, this morning, I would love for you to open up that participant activity guide. Letitia and I will be running through these slides, and so you'll see those, and you could print those off later if you wanted to. But you will be using your participant activity guide, so please get that opened up where you can make use of that. One of the best ways, or the most successful ways, I guess I should say, that I learn is by doing. And so we're going to make space today to get some work done. And I always like that. If I can walk away from, getting just some head knowledge and really actually process that and get to work with it a little bit. And so we're going to do that today. So super glad that y'all are joining us. And I'm Karen Castle. I'm Executive Director for Professional Services at Branching Minds, sort of emeritus at this point. So I work with a great team of educators that work with schools and districts across the country and internationally now to bring best or better, good practices of MTSS to our students and staff in our schools today. And so, boy, just so impressed that people are taking 1, 2, and 3 days to really dig deep into MTSS and into their own practice so that we can move this work along and begin to meet more and more of the needs that our students and staff have across the country in this wild and crazy time that we're living in. And so just thrilled to have you today. So we are going to be talking about change management, and I don't really like that word manage, although it's a real thing, but really thinking about change leadership and how we as leaders, whether that's in a very formal role or in an informal role, play a part in how we actually implement new ideas, new practice, new systems. And so we're going to look at some tools to use today and practice using them a little bit as we go. And we know that, we have so much change in education. We have so much change just in the world coming at us. And that causes a great deal of stress and maybe even some trauma in our lives as we try to cope with that. And so the more skilled we as leaders can become in leading this effort or these efforts with our staff, then the less traumatic change maybe will be for them, and the more we can begin to manage and really lead that in a way that accomplishes what our intention is. And so it really does fall on our shoulders as leaders to figure out the very best ways to not only motivate people, but to bring them along in their own growth process and their continuous improvement. And so what's our role as leaders there? So today we're going to look at Kotter's model and those components of change that can really help us prepare and get set for success. And so, some of the skills that you'll walk away with, I hope, are really, growing your leadership capacity as you maneuver and move through change. And then also project management. We manage a lot of projects as leaders in schools. And that's whether you're a classroom teacher, you got a lot of projects going on, whether you're a building level administrator, you've got a lot of plates spinning, or a district officer. And so all of these projects, and, how do you increase buy-in? And I'm increasingly unmotivated by that term buy-in, because I really want to talk more about how do we build trust and commitment to an effort that we think is the solution to a problem or a set of problems that we might have. And so, I mentioned that we have just so much change, thrown at us in life and school and in the district and in our communities. And it just looks like a lot of letters and a lot of jumble a lot of times. And that can feel very overwhelming if you're looking at a puzzle and you really don't even know what that puzzle is representing. What are we trying to do as a result of solving this problem or this puzzle? And so, with all of that change that's thrown at us, it can kind of trigger a couple of different reflexes from us in our personalities. And one of those is, improvement. Am I growing? Do I see an opportunity for growth? And sometimes we call those people, that they live in the clouds or they're eternal optimists or whatever. But I think there is a propensity in a lot of people to just continue to grow, and those challenges provide opportunity there, and it doesn't engender fear. But there's also a huge population that move right into compliance. Just tell me what I have to do. Just tell me the boxes I'm going to need to check. Tell me what you're going to look for, and I'll just do the best I can to get it done. And so in this effort around improving school experience for students and staff, how do we engender that culture of more continuous improvement and get away from what looks like compliance? And, some of the things that I think about when I think about compliance is that we create that culture. We've built this system that's created this compliance reflex by a lot of people. And it's because we're just changing all the time. We understand that we need time to practice things in order to master it. And yet we don't give ourselves time to practice things so we can master it. We want to jump out of the gate and be masterful all at the outset. There's a lot of confusion. Am I still doing this? Now I'm doing that. Am I doing both? What are we doing here? And what's our objective there? So sometimes a lot of confusion can lead to compliance. Not seeing the effort, the initiative, the new practice as a strategic activity that's going to really give us any bang for our buck. Not sure that it's going to solve the problem or lead to success, and we don't have clarity around that. A real lack of positive intent. And this one really just chaps me, to be honest. when we don't just over and over again show our people that we believe in them and we believe in their heart and we know that they come for the right reasons and to do the right thing and to act out of that mindset. When we don't have that positive intent or positive presupposition, we begin to get in that blame game, and that's uncomfortable for everybody. We don't often follow implementation science, and so that causes problems when we don't really think about all of the components that we need in order to implement something new or to change a behavior. And then a huge thing that leads to compliance is just a lack of personal agency, of being asked to do things, but not having the authority or the wherewithal or the skill or the room to actually begin to do those things. And so all of these things can really contribute to this compliance culture that we want to move from and help people move towards a culture of continuous improvement. And so these are some easy checks that you can do if you're starting to feel some reluctance or sabotage or, just a lack of progress, to just kind of go through this little mental checklist and say, I wonder, what people are confused about, or how have I not made these activities feel strategic and really purposeful? So you can use these as a little bit of a tool. And part of that confusion and stuff is just not knowing, again, the strategy behind it. How is this action going to impact this result? And so a lot of times just giving some good framework, because now if I tell you that all these letters have something to do with changes in education, you begin to pick up some words and some terms pretty easily. And then if I clarify that even more and tell you exactly what the goal is, these are the words I need you to find in the puzzle, you begin to have a much higher rate of success. I'm just going to ask, who solved the puzzle already? Anybody have all the words found yet? Just put it in the chat, or if you're online, raise your hand. All right, Babs got it. Good girl. Anybody else? All right. So again, this frame of educational changes, and then having the bones and the structure underneath that to have some real, short-term goals and accomplishments, some metrics for success. So when I find lesson plans in my puzzle, I'm feeling pretty good, and I cross that off, and I know I'm moving on to the next thing. So being able as a leader to provide some of this structure is just really important. So I'd like for you to think about for a minute how many initiatives you've had in your workplace in the last 3 years. Just throw it in the chat if you would. Just put a number in there. We've started this many things in the last 3 years in my district or in my school. Make sure you're in the session up on the top right of your screen, I think, where it says event agenda session. Make sure you're in that agenda so you can add to 214. Oh, my word. That's awesome. I mean, that's not awesome. That's funny, but I hope that's a slight exaggeration at least. All right. 8, 4, 2. Okay, not too bad, Matthew. 3. I bet there's more than that. Taylor has 7. Awesome. And Julia's lost track of how many she's had. So that can be the truth for everyone within that system, and speaks to what we're going to talk about sustaining new efforts too, because, once we've initiated one and start on another, we forget to talk about the first one, and then we start on the second. And then if we start talking about the third, we quit talking about the first one and the second one. And then, as I said in that list before, people start getting confused and they're unsure, of what direction they're going in. So I want you to take 1 or 2 of those initiatives, and I'd like for you to think about which ones were successful and which ones were not successful. Maybe just jot them down and put them in 2 columns: successful, unsuccessful. All right, everybody done that? And then I would like for someone, and Mandy, are you going to be brave for me and come off of mute and talk about a successful and an unsuccessful, or either or, of yours? Thank you.
I feel like a lot of what we're doing right now, especially after COVID, I came to this district during COVID. So everything was thrown out the window and accepted, and then thrown out the window again and accepted again. It's just this weird thing. But I also think now that as we learned over the last, the things that we learned over the last 3 years, everybody wants to shoot it at everything, but then we're all stuck because we're not seeing how they're interrelated versus like they're all siloed. So instead of seeing how they all come together, each silo is doing really great work, but it doesn't help from a district-wide perspective because none of us are talking to each other enough to bring them together.
Got you. Thanks. Johnny, how about you? You said you use a capacity burn chart to track them. Tell us more about that. Can you get yourself off mute and tell us about that tool? She's got her smart sheet listed there, so that's good. All right. We'll move on. Julie, how about you? Julie Connolly. Oh, I'm trying getting in.
Maybe Jameson Moore has
Great. Jameson, how about you? Thank you.
I would just say when we have the time to not be overwhelmed with projects, the ones that have been most successful have been ones that I appreciated the share of the smart sheet. That's what we use as well, pretty consistently with milestone tracking. But we were able to focus and have constant times that we came back to review data and where our successes were and where we were going to shift. That's been the most successful ones I've been a part of.
Great. So having that sustaining follow-up has made a big difference. Absolutely. That's great. And that's good because we're not even going to get to that very much today. So I'm glad that y'all have instituted some things like that. Awesome. All right. How about an unsuccessful implementation that you did, and why do you think the wheels came off of that? Jameson, do you have an example of that as well?
Yeah, plenty.
Let's just do one.
I would say the pandemic was like a great case study in unsuccessful implementations for many people. But the district I worked in during our school closures, when we kind of shifted to online learning, we lost all SEL touch as many people did, but we tried to roll things out quickly that were really not vetted, not understood, and didn't have a high level way of understanding the impact they were having. So it was a really disparate kind of rolled out, no cohesion, and nobody used them. And it was just a big waste of time and effort by everybody. So I would say that's the best one I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and you're bringing out some real critical pieces of, haste and some other things. Yeah, good. All right. All right. I think Johnny got in. There we go. Awesome.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. Sorry about that, guys. I'm a tech, and I just didn't read the red button that said click on here to share audio and video.
It's so many buttons.
It's the little things, I tell you.
And when they
So
make red, it's kind of avoidant for my eyes too. So thank you, Johnny.
You're welcome. So we actually have done 214 in the last 12 months. We run these with smart sheets. We do project management internally. I brought in a couple of years ago a team and taught all my guys how to do project management. And we've been doing it for a while. I'm actually going to be talking about project management at this conference, I believe, a couple of days from now. So if you guys get a chance, you might want to see that session. And I kind of cover how we do project management, how we set up a project charter, how we talk about things that are in scope, out of scope, and how much of a difference it can make on all the projects that get thrown at us if we've got a system in place just to capture them, catalog them, put them where they need to be, and figure out whether it really is aligning with the district's mission goals or not.
Yeah.
And if it's not, that's the point where you say, hey, I don't see where this fits in. Who's championing this? And if nobody's championing it, IT should not be the one taking it on just because IT feels like it's something good to do. If it doesn't fit, we collectively have to go in there and figure out, is this going to fit? Is it not? And at some point we need to push back and say, we'd love to do this. I just don't see where it fits in. Who's the champion? Where's this coming from? Where are the funds coming from? And how are you guys going to implement this?
Yeah. And really good points there. Now I've got an echo. So, okay, there we go. Because I think in those kind of tracking systems, you can also see where you have a lot of overlap and a lot of gaps as well. And so a lot of times, and this happens maybe more in larger districts where there's a lot of expertise and specialization and people in charge of a thing. And we can get a lot of things going at a group of students or at a grade band or what have you from a lot of different angles at the district leadership level. And until we start tracking those, as Johnny was saying, we don't often know unless we have a good vocal teacher or two that raises their hand and says, hey, wait a minute, what are we doing? That we actually have gaps of problems that we're not solving, and then we are overdoing solutions towards another problem. So great to see that y'all are using those tools. So it sounds like, and I'm interested for those of you who've kind of teased out some examples in your mind, what stage of this change you feel like you've been strongest in, and what stage in implementations that weren't successful do you feel like, oops, we left that out, we forgot that part, or what have you. So, you know, when we think about implementation, there's this whole readiness work that has to be done before we can even think to lay that on staff members or what have you. And then there's the implementation phase where we're actually getting people to begin to use this new practice tool, strategy, what have you. And then there's the sustainability phase. So I heard Jameson, you know, share a little bit about setting these metrics for success over time that can help with sustainability, but basically that's measuring whether we are achieving our goal. So I'm wondering if you're thinking about these phases of readiness, implementation, and sustainability, where you think you did a great job and where you think, oh, you know, maybe we didn't think about sustainability in a very robust way. We're doing a great job of measuring it, but what are we doing to grow in and through that sustainability phase? So any thoughts from the group on thinking about these implementations, these initiatives through these phases of installing them, adoption? Anyone? Jameson, you popped up on my screen again. I'm not sure why. I just get a few people at a time here.
I'm trying to like balance people calling for help at the time. So I was just gonna say that I multiple different like initiatives and adoptions. I feel like there's stages within implementation that can go really well and really be hard to manage if you're not prepared. But sustainability does seem to be the hardest thing in education because so many people leave, and that's what I've experienced most is that there may be a champion like Johnny was speaking to, but that champion leaves. And then the idea of like, how are we growing within the sustainability and the continuous improvement cycles disappears.
Yeah.
Like maybe they lead that meeting or they facilitate that meeting and they go away. And then somebody doesn't pick that mantle up. And that I think if you don't have a way of doing that, like a third point for doing that, it becomes very difficult to sustain and grow.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that energy demand is oftentimes higher than even the readiness and the initial implementation part where people are enthused and, you know, if this is, you know, we've got free lunch or whatever causes that enthusiasm. But, you know, it's like, and I talk about this example all the time because it's so real in my life. It's just like when I start a new fitness routine, you know, I'm excited at the beginning, get the new outfit, do the things. And then by week 2 or 3, when it's rainy out and it's cold and, you know, it would be much more enjoyable to stay in and watch a movie or whatever. Yeah, that's when it starts getting tough. And we see that in the work we do with districts and working through their MTSS adoption. That initially, you know, it sounds good and whatever, but then life starts, you know, just taking nicks out of your effort, you know. And so if you don't have that work, that support, that intentional learning that's going on for the adults throughout implementation and then into sustainability, it's hard to really fully adopt that change. So Good. Thanks, Jameson. And sorry to pick on you when you were busy putting out fires. Good. Kelly, how about you? What have you been thinking about as Kelly O'Brien, as we've been talking about some of these issues around adoption and new practices? Can Kelly jump off mute and join us here for a second? All right, tell your friends I call on people. Letitia is laughing at me.
Karen, we have a question in the chat about capacity burnout.
Okay.
And Tiffany just wanted, I don't know if Tiffany wants to come off mute to ask specifically her question, if she wants a definition or. Tiffany, are you there? Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I think when we who did put that on theirs, if you don't mind having Tiffany contact you,
Yes.
we kind of have a small group here, so I don't think you would be inundated with people. Thank you. I appreciate it. Awesome. Very good. Okay, Kelly, no problem. First things first. All right. Very good. All right. So let's get on to Cotter's work a little bit. So when we're talking about, the change model and really some very active steps that we can take to set ourselves up for success, we're talking about some of these activities. So I'm going to give you a chance to look at that for just a second. How many of you are familiar with Cotter's work? You can come off mute and holler, I am, I'm not, or, okay, thank you, Tiffany, or just put it in the chat. Oh, good. Thanks, Mandy. All right. Had you read it, or was it just on your shelf? I have some of those that I got with the best intentions. All right, good. Terrific. Thank you. Appreciate the feedback. That's helpful. All right. So, these are some steps that we're going to talk about today and actually take some time to run one of your initiatives through these. So this might be an initiative that you at your school or district are talking about for next year, or maybe it's one that you started this year that might be, those wheels might be wobbling a little bit, and you need to think about, where we are in our adoption and how might some of these pieces be missing from our preparation to approach this adoption. So this is where I'd like for you to get out your participant guide, if you could, or open that up on another screen, or however you're managing your summit experience, so that we can begin to dive into each of these components. And we want to think about this in light of, you as a leader and what your role is in these. So I'd like for you in your participant guide to just take a minute to think about and jot down, maybe on the top of your guide on page 2, what initiative am I going to really focus on as we move through each of these components that Cotter brings forward as effective in helping us make positive changes. So just describe that initiative in a few words. So the leader's role in helping to move change forward, the first component that Cotter talks about and that we hear a lot from folks like Simon Sinek and others out there is creating a sense of urgency or helping people understand the why of this initiative, of this practice change, of this new thing that we're going to try to do. And you know, I think that the why is really important, but I think that as leaders, if we stop at really establishing the why, that buy-in or that trust and that commitment that I mentioned earlier gets very shaky if we don't follow the why with the how we're going to do that. So I think people can begin to perceive us as a little bit disingenuous when we are very eloquent in describing why we're going to do this. And, you know, it's to help the children, or it's whatever, you know, our why is, whatever problem we're going to solve. If we don't dig into the how, because I know for me, if people tell me why I need to do something, and then they just walk away, I don't feel very supported. I feel like I'm in it all by myself and that sort of thing. So in your participant guide, can somebody, Laurel, do you have your guide open? Could you read that little description of creating a sense of urgency for us? Thank you, Laurel. I'm going to take the pressure off of Laurel, and I'm going to read this one, and Laurel, I'm going to call on you on the next one. So be ready. So creating a sense of urgency, as stated here in your little packet, is inspiring people to act with passion and purpose to achieve a bold, aspirational opportunity, build momentum that excites people to pursue a compelling and clear vision of the future together. So I want you to think a little bit about this initiative that you're going to think about throughout this packet today and run through this exercise. How would you create a sense of urgency for that adoption? Yes, John.
So one of the things we did is we created a vision board, and I asked the guys, you know, if we could do anything in the next 10 years, what would we do? And again, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, got a lot of sharp tools out there. They understand the vision of the district. So how are we getting there? What is it that would give us the biggest bang for the buck? And I started taking their answers, their visions of what they would like to see our future look like, because it's a community that's putting this together. It's not my vision. It's not really even the district's vision. It's how are we going to make the things that we feel like the district should be doing, because we collectively are the vision. It's not just the district that comes up with we're going to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, okay, well, how do we collectively feel we can get to the solutions that you guys are looking to do, and what are your visions? And so we put together a vision board, and we put it together in 2016, and half of the things on that board are done.
Yeah.
Half of them.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many, because they're impassioned about it. It's like, well, we've got a sense of urgency now, because, you know, these are things that we really want to get done. So we're getting them funded, and we're creating projects, and we're assigning them, and we're putting teams together, and they're part of the team that's making the solution happen. And they're excited about doing the work that they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So how you went about creating that sense of urgency was getting those stakeholders involved in identifying how they wanted to accomplish that why of whichever problem, excuse me, it was that they've tapped into to solve. Awesome. Thanks. So what are often barriers to creating a sense of urgency? And and I've put a single column or a single, cell here for you to type in some barriers that you might have in creating this sense of urgency in your staff. And I would challenge you to maybe divide that cell in half again, identify those barriers, and then leave room to the side of that to, what solutions do we think we could have to make sure that we don't get blockaded, that we're not stopped by whatever that barrier was. Thanks, John. I love a good chart paper with Post-it notes. That's good. My favorite. Yeah. So identifying those potential barriers is really critical. And then, this is a very simple chart that we'll talk about how you're going to build this out even further as we go, but creating that sense of urgency, not just the why, but how do we then get into the how and the what? And so in this, you also see that, we want to create a timeline. We want to assign a team leader or a group to take charge of that. So this is the first step that Kotter identifies. It's really, really critical to make sure that we have a sense of urgency that we can maintain. And then the second thing is building a guiding coalition. You ready, Laurel?
Maybe.
You are. Awesome.
Maybe I thought that button up there is not for me, but there it is. You just click things until it works, eh?
Exactly. And then if what I do is then I forget to make a note of which thing I click. So the next time I have to go through the same random process of solving my problem. So, all right, Laurel, could you take a stab at helping us understand building a guiding coalition, which is a little bit different than what John was talking about of bringing stakeholders together. But what do you read into that component?
Do you want me to read the definition first, or?
Please.
It says, a volunteer network needs a coalition of committed people born of its own ranks to guide it, coordinate it, and communicate its activities.
So Laurel, you've been a partner with Branching Minds for a while and really dug in deep to this MTSS work ahead of us partnering with you. So how do you translate this building a guiding coalition in the work that you've done around this initiative?
Well, I started with a vision coalition of district leaders. And when I first started with MTSS and before Branching Minds, I was new to the district. So I didn't know really who to bring into the guiding coalition. I asked those leaders, the district leadership people, who would they recommend? And I told them the job titles of the people that I was interested in being on the guiding coalition. And based on their recommendations of positions within the district, I sent out emails and just invited them, do you want to be a part of something new, this very exciting work? And we pulled together over 200 people into the guiding coalition who helped us write our framework, and it was very successful, asking for leaders from the district leadership. And then they could choose whether they wanted to stay on or not in that initial time period.
Yeah, and so those leaders, those district leaders, all having expertise in particular areas and more general knowledge overall, but probably really honing in on specific components of MTSS that they were knowledgeable about or willing to become knowledgeable about. So, yeah, and I think this guiding coalition would also, maybe even refining it a little bit differently or more is, that search that you do for your own learning about, what is MTSS? Who are the experts in the country, in the state doing work? How can I bring in their expertise and pick their brains and learn from them. And having a few of those people, even outside of your district, that have expertise that can help you sometimes aspire more highly, sometimes pull you out of the clouds, depending on what your propensity is. But so that guiding coalition is really intended to be the guardrail folks that help you stay on track towards that intention that you have, and to make sure that it is aligning, as we talked about earlier, with your district and school level goals, also your values and those kinds of things. So that getting that, maybe not 200 people, but even a subset of those folks who become that ongoing guiding coalition might become your district level committee that has district, school level, and some maybe community or those experts that pop in. So
absolutely. That group of 200 was there only to help us write our framework. And now there's one person from every campus who's my go-to person. And then the central team is still there. We meet very regularly to make sure we're still on track.
Yeah, exactly. So that's your guiding coalition right there. Awesome. All right. And then that vision, and I've heard that a little bit, already, forming that strategic vision. And that strategic word is really critical. So Tiffany, do you have your mute button solved? Can I get you to come off and tell us a little bit about forming that strategic vision from our participant guide?
Okay, so here's what I learned, Tiffany. At the top above the slide deck is a button that says ask to share audio and video. You do want to click that. And when you do, you'll be able to join in.
There we go.
That was not intuitive for me.
We're going to get everybody going here shortly. All right. No problem, Tiffany. We'll get you in a minute. Lisa, were you able to find your participant guide by looking underneath the presentation into the resource section? Awesome. Can you take that forming a strategic vision for us then and read that little explanation at the top? Oh, look, everybody's coming now. Good deal. All right, I'll go ahead and take a stab at it. So clarifying how the future will be different from the past and getting commitment, trust, buy-in for how you can make that future a reality through initiatives linked directly to the vision. So Lisa, have you been able to get unmuted? Come back and give you a chance. Tiffany, how about you?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, there's Lisa. Awesome.
It took me a second to get in. Sorry, you want me to read the...
I just read the little blurb on forming a strategic vision. If you could share a little bit what that means to you around the initiative you've been thinking about.
Well, it's interesting because this whole MTSS, like I'm working on my dissertation right now for my doctorate, and I'm coming from a place of being a employee driven, not top down. So with the MTSS being very system, I really have zero agency to implement something like this in my organization. So, I'm coming to this to just learn more about it so that, who knows, maybe down the road, my colleagues and I can put a coalition together to, promote this at more of a systemic level, because right now in my position, I have very little, if any, agency to make change at all. So in terms of, creating initiatives, we could maybe potentially just make a small model of the MTSS of like within our school of who could do which systems of support. So I'm a student success coach. So that's basically an academic coach / special ed resource teacher. I guess that's the best way to explain my role. So, and we get a lot of kids sent to us that like, here, you help them, whether they have a learning plan or their executive functioning is the main thing we work with students. But a lot of that could be done by classroom teachers and advisors. So potentially what we're looking at is just on a small scale, not a big scale, is who could be doing like the tier 1 support, tier 2 support. So, you know, when we're talking about forming a strategic vision, it's more a vision from coming from a part of our department of what we can do as opposed to a whole systemic change.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point. And I just heard a shift in your own agency as you spoke. And I loved hearing that you know, you begin to think about the possibility of just running this at your school, you know, and getting started that way. And I think sometimes we think, you know, that if it's not a, you know, big systemic thing, but you're still going to create a system. And so these components of change are, you know, real, you know, whether, again, you're trying to get your family to do something different for the holidays, or if you know, you're trying to move a school staff in a direction together. So I loved hearing that little shift that you had. So yeah, so this is still, you know, you're creating that sense of urgency, and sometimes you're describing that sense of urgency. You know, it's already bubbled up, and I'm not really creating that because it's bubbled up. I now just need to describe it and begin to, you know, build that coalition and form a vision of how we are thinking about solving that. So, all right, I want to give everybody just a couple of minutes to think. So we've been through like the first 3 elements that Cotter puts forward as we begin to think about change and leading change and preparing for that. So in your packet, whatever that initiative or part of an initiative that you're thinking about, you may have started MTSS on the academic side, and now you're really trying to fold in the social emotional, the behavioral elements within your MTSS. You may be trying to fold in your gifted and talented, or your language learning population, or what have you. So again, every time you're making that kind of a change, these steps can be really helpful in laying a good foundation for success as you move forward, something that really is sustainable. So just a couple of minutes and think about that initiative and think about these 3 components. You got a place to write there, so make your notes. And anybody else that's kind of listening in and haven't hit that button at the top right hand that says that you want to share your audio and camera, please do that, because we would love to bring more of you into this discussion.
I had a comment, Karen, if you don't mind.
I don't.
One of the things while we're talking about strategic visions, as leaders, we need to know what those are. We can hypothesize what they are, but we should actually know what the goals for the district are. And there should be board goals, and there should be IT goals, because sometimes IT dreams things up that it needs to do in order to facilitate those as we're moving forward. But we should know what those board goals are. And there should be board directives and things that we can refer back to. And one of the things we do is, I know you guys can't actually see this, but this is a project charter. On the back of our project charter, which says what we're doing, it has a list on the back, and on the list, it says goal alignment. Which of the board goals and IT goals does this project align to? And then we have them all listed. So if somebody is going to turn in a request to us, they need to, first of all, be the one thinking, okay, well, how does this actually align to the bigger picture? And if it doesn't, why are they even sending it over to us? So that helps stop a lot of things that sound like a great idea, but it doesn't really align to where we're all supposed to be heading, the vision, the direction. And if we get too many people going in too many different directions, it slows the process down. Like a bunch of fish going upstream and then a bunch of fish going the other direction. You know, you're not going to get the push through that you're looking for if you aren't aligning. And this helps us help align them with the vision and what are we doing currently that is going that direction, so that it's part of the shared resources. We don't have anything in our resources, so we need to be able to channel those go in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah, that alignment piece is so critical. And it's one of the key pieces that pushes people towards compliance if you don't have that alignment. Because again, people don't see the strategic nature of their effort. And so that becomes really shooting yourself in the foot. And again, people can only put effort into so many things over the course of a year. And if we are asking them to do too many things that they view are disparate or different, then they're going to pick the things that they can manage. And so we have a lot of false starts that way. So thanks for sharing that, John. And we're going to be in a breakout group here in a little bit, so we'll be able to share even more together. But all right, so our next set of components that Cotter brings forward is now that enlisting a volunteer army. Bridget, are you able to come off of mute? And you've got your participant guide here. Or how about Tiffany?
I can now.
Okay, there we go. Good, Tiffany.
Description says large-scale change can only occur when massive numbers of people rally around a common opportunity. At an individual level, they must want to actively contribute. Collectively, they must be unified in the pursuit of achieving that goal together.
Yeah, yeah. So what does that mean to you, and what kind of barriers have you encountered, or could you imagine that you would encounter in trying to enlist that volunteer army?
So I'll keep talking for myself. So I'm a consultant in Iowa, and in the middle of Iowa, so we have a ton of rural schools around us. They're mostly very small schools that are pulling lots of little towns in the area, right? So staff can be small, and typically that building coalition is like the people who want to volunteer and they're already on the building coalition.
Yeah.
So getting more people involved and to actively volunteer is a barrier that I have experienced a lot, because in a small staff, lots of times those people are already on the coalition, like working on the leadership team already. So then getting more people involved and having a small staff in the first place sometimes can be a barrier. So
yeah. So how many times have we heard, it's one more thing, that I have to do, and I just don't have time to do it. I don't have the energy to do it. I don't even know how to do it. And so again, those pushbacks give us as leaders the indication of what support they need, right? If they say, I don't have the time to do it, then I need to look at what is that person actually doing? Is it a matter that they don't see the alignment of their work to this effort as well? And another thing, people hate is, oh, it's just what we've been doing. We're calling it something else. Then, the ways that we try to manipulate people into not feeling bad or not complaining at least. So I think just that ability to hear what people are saying for their pushback and listen to that for what they're actually telling us they need is really important. But yeah, enlisting that larger group of people that are really going to come on board. But again, I think what we're after here is the thoughtfulness behind each of these steps. And that if we don't put thought into, okay, how are we going to roll this out? Is it just going to be everybody? Is it going to be just those people or just these grades or what have you? Are we just going to do a soft launch? You might have noticed that's a little pet peeve of mine. A soft launch means later, right? So, I don't know that that's a real thing, but, so I think what we're after here in showing this model, and again, y'all have experience with other things, is just the intentionality of each of these decisions. To have a plan about each of these decisions and steps and elements of change and who it impacts. So again, it's not necessarily that you just go in and say, well, everybody's doing it. That's a decision that you make, and you can make another decision if that's not the right decision for this time, for this initiative, for this group, or what have you. So, the thought that we put into making sure that the people that are engaged in this have a sense of agency. They know that they have support. They know that they don't have to be a master tomorrow. They know that what their targets are. They know that they have the autonomy, the permission to make the decisions they need to make to do this change. All of those things are critical, as we think about who's going to be involved in this implementation.
Can I ask
Awesome.
a quick question? Really quick
Sure.
question.
Yeah.
At this point of like the enlist the volunteer army, or maybe throughout this whole process as we talk, is there a point where because like I'm hearing a lot of making sure teachers have what they need to engage in the change very willingly, or maybe not very willingly, but on their own, right? Is there a point in the process where compliance comes more into, you see it happen more? Like in my experience, the enlist a volunteer army would be like, you've planned it and now you're just kind of gonna have people do it, like, is there a point where, or are we trying to avoid that altogether? Or like, can you talk to me a little bit about the compliance piece and if it comes into this, or if we're trying to avoid that altogether, or like how that comes into play?
Sure. In my world, we're trying to minimize that. At some point with some folks, compliance might be the best first place that they can go. And within that compliance, when I label their onboarding as compliance, then I want to figure out why it's at that level, and so I think that's what we're talking about when we were talking about enlisting that army of, what are they saying about the change that tells me the kind of support I need to give them. So, a lot of people are overwhelmed immediately because, again, they think my expectation is that they're an expert in a week. And so if I know that about that person, or I sense that, then I need to make sure that I'm sharing language with them that says, in a month, I hope that this is where you are. This is what we're going to do to get there. And so just the ways that they push back, the things that they say really do say, I'm raising my hand to get help here. and then I can get on board. Laurel, yeah, great. Laurel says right here in the chat, if you have compliance, find places to celebrate, places where growth is happening. And again, I think that that's, kind of personal to folks. And so knowing your people is really critical, which is hard for a consultant in Iowa dealing with, a lot of people. And we, at Branching Minds struggle with the same thing. It's how do we build ongoing relationships with these people so we begin to learn and know them, as people. That's always a challenge. But I think, people say things and it makes me ask 2 or 3 more questions of them, to get to what I think I'm hearing, because I also don't want to assume just because they've said this, they meant that, unless I've asked some questions about it. But it sure does guide me. Does that help, Tiffany? Okay, awesome. All right. So the next thing, about these barriers. Anybody else come up with some other barriers? Tara suggested, just staffing. It's hard. It's really hard. Anybody else want to share a barrier that they've encountered in building an army? All right. And I think, when you are talking about barriers, we've been listing them, out in each of these sections. So we can anticipate that, it's so easy to say build a vision. It is not easy to build a vision, a common vision. That takes work. I mean, every single word matters, in that vision. And so how do you get a group of people to come to some consensus around, what that is and what those words mean? Because people have their own history with what that word means. So come into common language and terminology and what that vision means. So I think this step of, identifying barriers and then removing barriers. So remember I said in that middle section on your participant guide to divide that into 2 columns. What's the barrier? And then how can I enable adoption by removing some of these barriers? And a lot of times, I'm not removing the barrier, but it's someone else or some other experience or some other set of knowledge or practice or what have you that might remove the barrier. All right. And then this next one is generating short-term wins. Letitia, we haven't heard from you, my colleague, Letitia. You want to take us through this last one? This short-term wins? Is she off helping somebody?
I'm here. I was just trying to respond to the
Chat.
yes.
Good. Yeah.
All righty. Sorry, give me 1 second. All right. Short-term wins.
Short-term wins.
Okay. Here we are. Wins are the molecules of results. They must be recognized, collected, and communicated early and often to track progress and energize volunteers to persist.
Yeah.
And, I just think for just my experience and just personally as just even a human, we get so sometimes overwhelmed with what is to come. And we are, and a lot of us, we backwards design. So we think about the end goal and we really only think that we should celebrate when we get there. It is so important to, whether we want to do milestones, as was mentioned today, but we take that time to really celebrate, whether it's in weekly meetings, whether it is bi-weekly meetings, all of the wonderful things that everyone is doing to get us to that goal. But it's really important for us to know all the steps, obviously, that's going to take to get us to that goal. And when we know those steps, we have to celebrate. I'm super big on celebrations, which create traditions, which literally enhance your culture. It enhances compliance. It enhances accountability. People want to be celebrated. People want to get credit for the things that they're doing, and they're doing them. But we as leaders and people who have the agency to celebrate, we have to celebrate. It really makes a difference, and it's going to get us to the end goal faster.
Yeah. Thanks, Letitia.
Mhm.
You are a good celebrator.
Yeah.
There are lots of good parties, so that's good.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So those short-term wins of again, this is about intentionality, about purposefully anticipating what those are, but also having your eyes open to surprise wins, to things that you didn't anticipate was going to be a win. It might be that reluctant person who all of a sudden, is stepping up and starting to make suggestions and, getting to the meeting early and bringing all their data and, whatever those things are. I think that being able to notice those changes that you might not have written down as a real short-term win, don't let those go by either, without celebrating. And again, just like, with our students in our classrooms, knowing how people like to celebrate, brings that great outcome. I think sometimes if we put the wrong celebration with the wrong, the right people, or the right celebration with the wrong people, or what have you, those things can kind of backfire. So again, I think the intentionality of considering this as part of your planning process of getting ready to tackle a new adoption, a new practice, a new strategy. Don't skip this part. What are you anticipating those wins are going to be, and what surprises might you see along the way if you're keeping your head up and your eyes open and your heart full of wonder. That goes a long way too. All right, so Letitia, we're going to put these folks in breakout rooms, and so we're going to have some people that we haven't seen on our screen or have been able to get off a mute or whatever. So we'll hope that all 40 of these people end up in a breakout room. But what I'd like for you to do is just talk about these first components, and be a little bit vulnerable with the people in your breakout room to share a little bit about where you as a leader feel you could step up your intentionality, that you could step up your getting ready by thinking of each of these components that we've covered thus far. Just be a little bit vulnerable, because everybody, we can all do a lot better about this. I'm not great at, always anticipating short-term wins. I'm a, end of the road, get her done kind of a gal. And so for me, I sometimes just say, when you get to the end, I'll congratulate you or whatever, which is not good. So, just be a little bit vulnerable with your breakout friends here, and talk about these first 6 components and which ones maybe convicted you a little bit of, oh, I haven't been doing that, or boy, we need to take this initiative through all of these things again. So Letitia, can we put, see, we had people leave because they knew they were going in a breakout room. That's okay. That's okay. We've got 30 people-ish, so let's just do like 10 breakout rooms. They can do 3 people in a room, and we'll hope that at least 2 of those show up, and we'll get to visit with each other and exchange your, who you are and all of that. And let's spend about 10 or 12 minutes talking about that. All right. So, Laurel, could you tell me what you're going to do in your breakout room?
Hello. Well, first, I'm going to see who's there.
Oh, there they went. Letitia's quick. Okay, they're doing it. Awesome.
I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
I apologize.
No,
It didn't allow you to like send them. It just
it just started. Okay.
yeah. Sorry.
That's great. That's
All right,
great.
I'm gonna see if we should be able to get into these rooms, right? Yes. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to take? Well, why is that out of order like that? That's weird. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Just pop in wherever you want, and
Yeah, I was gonna say we may go 3, 4, 5,
Yeah.
6, or okay.
that's fine.
All right.
We won't get in all of them, but yeah.
Okay. I'll start at the bottom.
Okay.
Nobody was in my breakout session.
Oh, well, you can talk to me then. That's sort of why I stood back here a little bit. Well, how are you, Mandy?
We're good. How are you?
I'm good. Good. Now tell me about yourself, just
Yeah,
shortly.
Yeah, I'm in New Hampshire, in Hopkinton. So I had done MTSS work for my master's programming a number of years ago, and now just really at a place where I'm kind of, well, I used it as part of my grad coursework, but I developed a professional development to kind of bring the implementation idea to the leadership team and then what that looks like. So that's really where I'm at right now is being able to bring it to them in ways that doesn't feel overwhelming, because you use the word implementation and everybody's capacity plummets.
Yeah.
So it's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. I think that's one of the hardest parts of doing this implementation is the district level. Of getting them to row in the same direction, and not to just, it always makes me think of when I was a middle school principal and, I had this band director that thought the world revolved around band, which was awesome because we always had a great band, but he was a pain in the rear. I wanted that passion and that single focus, but I constantly was reminding him how he fit into the total picture of things. And that always makes me think of, directors of, which I was one of those too. So, it's hard to, get people to loosen up on their turf, and become one of the team and I think of themselves that way. Yeah.
We're just, it's there. There's slow slog type movement, I guess is fair to say. I'm a director of student services, so kind of taking, when we look at the fact that we have a third grade class that have 38% of students on an IEP, that's an instruction issue. That's a tier, like that's a system thing. It is not a special ed thing. And it's not that just this class. I could probably list different grade levels that have different things that could be attacked through an integrated MTSS type system, and just being able to articulate it in a way that's the same district wide. And so I think that, like, I can say those words and people can nod and be like, I absolutely agree. They believe in it. But to then move it just feels so overwhelming.
Yeah.
So we just do the little steps and we're checking boxes, which is wonderful. But then we're going to go back and align those boxes after the fact versus ahead. That's kind of where.
Right.
But
yeah. And I think, you know, those collaborative structures that you need to get grade levels to, again, be a team and look at their data together and see that, oh, we've got to make these changes in core instruction, you know, in tier 1. And we did a webinar last year, you know, just talking about the myth of the triangle and accelerating instruction. Do you remember that one?
I know the triangle for sure.
Okay. Well, we were debunking the triangle or whatever, which,
thank you.
You know, we love a good provocative title, but really, you know, how do you get teachers to say that if, you know, 80% of my kids don't have this skill, then I need to address it during core instruction. You know, that I can't send all those kids out places, you know. And when they get together and you talk about it, they go, yeah, that makes sense. I need permission to do that.
Right.
You know,
It's exactly what I was just writing about for my project for my grad cert.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to talk to you more about it, or however we can help you some more. We would love to. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just really excited for the next few days to kind of dig in and be like, okay, where are those questions? Where are the things? What's the in, I guess, because, like, you know, I it's not that we don't have people with good hearts and good minds and good intention. It's just, how do you put it all together to move?
Right.
That's
Do you have a handbook? Do you have a you do for MTSS?
Well, I've downloaded quite a number from different schools, different guidebooks, what did people use for an implementation plan? What do they look like now? My first work in it, and I refer back to it all the time, just to kind of build from, not to say that it's the gospel or anything, but was an MTSS RTII framework done by the Vermont Agency of Ed back in 2013-ish, 14, somewhere in there. So that's kind of like my guide to, you know, here's what we're really looking at. Here's the basis of it. And now let's bring that into what education is now. And how do we do that? So I don't have something like one singular thing I go to, but a multitude of things. I just went to the special education director conference, and I purposefully chose sessions that were geared for MTSS and things like that. So,
well, and I would say too, Mandy, that you can get many things, you know, and I think that's something that we've encouraged. You know, it's sort of like we have a new reading curriculum. 2 years later, we're not getting results, so we have a new reading curriculum, and we're starting over again, and you know, all of this. And it's like, when do we figure out it's not the curriculum? It is our implementation, you know, of it. And so, how do we fix that? And I think these kinds of things, like going through this change model, you know, is a great way to just get started, you know, have a project plan that is MTSS implementation and adoption, you know, which is not an easy thing, but we have found, you know, we offer infrastructure coaching through Branching Minds. And in that, you know, one of our outputs from that is a handbook. And so much like Johnny and Laurel and, you know, some of the others have shared, you know, getting that stakeholder group together to define some things and get some common language and it's a place where you can get them to come to agreement and make a commitment in front of witnesses that I find helpful, so we have some tools. I don't know how much you've explored our website and our resource tab. But we have
A little bit.
yeah,
Just because I wanted to be here and then
yeah.
and then kind of reach out and see. I know my I only knew about this because my superintendent went to something where somebody presented and he was just like, listen, half the time I leave those things because I'm sick of people trying to sell me something. He's like, but there was something about what I was listening to. He couldn't tell me who was speaking that just said that we needed to explore this a little bit more. So here I sit.
Yeah. Good.
And happily so. From excited.
Well, like I said, get on our website and go to that resource tab because we have a whole guide that I think could shortcut your effort a little bit.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And it's free. We want people to be able to, move forward, and whether, we help you in some way, that's a way we can help everybody who's willing to, to take advantage of it. So,
right.
And then just follow up with us. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that might be a simple way to kind of get some tools in place for discussion. And again, to get that team together, that guiding coalition together, to come up with an implementation plan and get started on it. But these things will help, with Kotter's model here.
And I'm so glad you got that I joined this session because I had forgotten all about the Kotter model and I just used it for my CAGS programming. So I'm like, I have this right in front of me and I didn't even.
Good.
Nice bring back. But I've got to go be a bus monitor now.
Oh, okay. Well, good luck.
Everybody else short-staffed.
Okay.
So we'll see you guys later. Thank you.
Thanks, Mandy. Bye-bye. All right, here comes everybody. All right. All right. Is Tiffany still with us? All right. Johnny, who did you meet that you enjoyed meeting? Uh-oh, where'd he go? Oh, there he is. Johnny, who did you meet that you enjoyed meeting?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. I ended up in a session with a couple people, and I ended up being the speaker for some strange reason.
That surprises me.
Yeah, they were from a couple smaller locations.
Yeah.
We're from a district of 55,000 kids, 9,000 staff members, 87 locations. So
yeah,
we kind of end up being the elephant in the room in a lot of places that we go. So
yeah. Okay.
But we were, they were just really interested in, the whole idea of project management when it comes to managing this stuff.
Yeah.
And taking the fire out of it. It doesn't need to be on fire. Just because it is on fire doesn't mean it needs to be that way.
And project management can take the fire right out of it. Yeah.
It can. It's just a skill set.
Yeah. Yeah. That thoughtfulness and intentionality. Laurel, are you still with us?
Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
All right. Who'd you meet?
Well, I met Sierra. She's from California, but she and I only had a bit of a chat because we had some difficulty with the audio video.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So I came back to the main room and I was listening in on your conversation, which was great.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. All right. Well, the last couple of pieces of Kotter's, is really, I think the hardest part is, sustaining, that acceleration. And I know, Laurel, you do a lot of things in Richardson to sustain this adoption process? What do you think has been most effective for you guys to keep this work moving forward?
I think approaching it on several fronts is important. So celebrating the wins of the campuses. Like Johnny, we're from a rather large district. So shouting out to campuses publicly via Twitter or whatnot, or in our own internal documents, celebrating the wins of individual campuses has been important. Keeping that visioning team together and meeting quarterly so that we all stay connected is important, and keeping ourselves centered, like Johnny said earlier, on our district board goals and our strategic plan and our graduate profile, like reminding people of how MTSS is the connector of all of those things. And then going out to the early adopter schools in a coaching framework and a coaching mindset, and then celebrating what those people are doing. And then their peer schools see the celebrations of what they're doing, and they want to do it too. So my job really is to amplify the voices of the campuses and then also of the different vision team. They own the parts of their framework. I'm just the one that brings it together and says, hey, did you know what so-and-so is doing? That's so great. How about this?
Yeah. And that's no little task. I hope nobody felt that you were minimizing that. That's a huge, huge task to keep people connected around the work that aren't necessarily in their own building. I think is really vital on a couple of fronts. One, so that they are exchanging and learning from each other, but two, so they don't feel like they're the only ones doing something. You know, there is a universality, you know, to this effort and work and commitment by the district. So I know y'all have done a great job with that. Tiffany, how about you? Who did you get to chat with?
I actually didn't have anyone else in my group. I tried to come back and join a few other groups, but then had technical difficulties and was just able to get back on. So I'm just listening to other people and what they shared in their small groups.
All right. Okay. Boy, this technology, it can be a bear, can it? Yeah. And just when you
and
think
an
they move
unfamiliar platform for me too. So I think it's probably just me. But
no, it's really not, Tiffany. I won't even go into how our team for today was together yesterday late afternoon in very panic mode because we were having lots of problems. So don't feel like the Lone Ranger there. Yeah. So as you were preparing to go into your group to have a discussion, what thoughts did you have about your role in thinking about these different components of planning and leading change that Cotter brings forward? Where do you think you do a great job, and where have you been a little bit reminded to increase your effort?
Yeah, since I'm a consultant, my role really is around coaching administration, really, and helping them understand these processes and kind of helping them put in perspective what it might take to have good implementation of an initiative, and helping them think through kind of initiative fatigue type things and help them build out their plans. And so, I mean, the school and my schools do get switched, not every year, but this year I'm with new schools, and coming into my new schools, they're in a place where they have new administration across the board in every building and a second year superintendent. And so they're coming in and there's lots of change. Yeah. And it's good change. Sounds like they're new to me too this year, but it sounds like they're ready to move, but then coming into it, like kind of assessing where they're at currently. And then when they're working to put new changes into place, being thoughtful about how not to overwhelm folks, because there's a lot of new coming at them because they have, a bunch of new administrators who have good ideas and are pushing MTSS and other system type changes forward. And so I'm not familiar with Cotter's work and have not seen this framework before, but I really appreciate the framework to help us even have conversations about what this looks like, what barriers might be. And I love like your conversation with me before about really listening to what people are saying in terms of If they're pushing back, it may be, what's the underlying need that they have. So to provide that support, I think that's a really good conversation for me to think about and bring forth to administrators too, so that they can think about not just like, oh, frustration, like, which is your first human reaction to that. It's like,
Sure.
I'm trying to do this change and these people won't do it. And, like working through that and seeing what might be underneath it to provide the support. And so that is something I have really appreciated and have not done well before. And so I'm excited to bring this tool and those conversations into my districts and buildings.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I was really surprised several years ago when we were talking with a group from a large district, not Laurel's and not Johnny's, another large district, their principals, and talking about these elements of implementing something new and what, they need to. And I just asked them, because I thought everybody built implementation plans when they would start something new. They would build a project plan or whatever. And how many of you have, built an implementation plan for, MTSS? And not one of them. And even knowing how to go about it. And so I thought, wow, we really need to help leaders across schools, both at district and school level, to be more intentional and getting beyond the strategy of hope. I hire good people, they'll do good things. Oh, that seems very precarious to me. But how can I really be thoughtful, through this? And so, Kotter's again kind of takes us up to sustaining, and then there's a whole nother, piece. And Jameson talked a little bit about it, setting those ongoing yearly benchmarks and milestones, but not just to set those milestones in and of themselves, thinking that somehow they'll happen, but what supports will people need, various stakeholders need, in order to accomplish that milestone in year 3. I mean, Laurel's sitting here in year 3 or 4. Yeah, 4. 5. Yeah. Well, we'll give you a -1 for COVID, but anyway, and I know the effort that she puts in every year to think about, where are the schools that started off year 1, where are the year 2, who started getting into it in year 3, and the different levels of support they need. And I love to see districts responding that way, because I think it's what people need. I know it's what I need when I'm trying to make a change. I don't need to be treated like everybody else or what have you. It also models differentiation, right? So I'm providing different levels of support for this principal or this school or this grade band because of where they are in their learning and adoption. And that's what I want you to do, teacher, in the classroom for your kiddos, so it's just great modeling all the way around. So, just real quickly, thinking about what that sustaining and planning for the long haul is, and, it's easy to say install then implement, but sustaining is the hardest part. Sustaining an effort is just, how do I build in supports? How do I set new challenges in year 2 and year 3 and year 4? How do I keep people growing? And so it is about continuous improvement and planning for that, supporting that, documenting that, celebrating that along the way. So there's a neat little thing in your packet. It's this little problem solving tool. And, when you start to see, that the change is happening really well, then that all of these things have happened, that we did a good job building trust. We set a good vision. We gave people skills. We provided resources. We started getting the results from our action plan. So we had all of those pieces, in place. But if we don't build trust, and we do a good job in all the rest of these things, there are going to be people out there, situations that sabotage our effort. If we build really great trust, but we don't have clarity, we haven't set a good, strong vision, even though we've given skill, we've done the PD, we gave you the book, we gave you the time, here's your action plan, but we didn't build clear, ongoing clarity for them. People are confused. And when people are confused, they don't have enough energy, to combat that. If we don't give people the skills, so, Tiffany and talking with you, if people don't know how to manage their classroom in order to accommodate differentiation, how do we then build those skills, those muscles, so that people can do that? Because if we don't, people are going to be anxious and anxiety and feel like a failure, and then they act the way they act, when they're not being successful around something. If we don't give people the right resources, they get mad. You expect me to do this and I don't have blah, 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 and I'm just picturing myself in each of these situations, and again, if we don't have the results ironed out, so again, back to that soft launch, do what you feel like doing or whatever means later, when I have a clear goal and expectation of a result, I'll get after it. But if I don't, we're just going to have this sporadic start, stop, start, stuff going on. And then, if we don't have a plan, we're going to have false starts. We're going to have enthusiasm up front and no structure, no infrastructure to maintain it. And it's going to stop, it's going to dwindle off. So I love this little tool. It really helps me problem solve. So Tiffany, I think this might be something that'll help you as well. All right. So let me get to this last thing. Here's some resources for you guys. I'm going to turn you guys loose to enjoy the rest of your day and 2 more days of great summit activity. But I want you to have this. Again, it's in the PowerPoint that you can print off there, or we'll also be emailing these resources to all of the pre-conference attendees. So you'll get these resources a little bit differently than you would the stuff that's tomorrow and the next day. Okay, so you can have your expectations set for that in a week or 2. All right. I sure appreciate it. It's so good to meet you guys and to see some old friends here with us too, and just appreciate your participation, and hope something out of Kotter's model, reminds you to do some things as a leader, and helps you too to identify where things aren't going well, what might be the solution for getting things back on track. So enjoy getting to spend time with you, and Branching Minds is here to help you in any way we can around MTSS or any of these leadership ideas that might be helpful. Hope you have a great, great couple of days coming forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you.